All right, my friends, welcome to the very first episode of Fill the Frame. I'm here with my good friend, the Toy Page. You may know him. You've seen him around. We have a very special guest tonight, also another familiar face that you guys might recognize. But before we introduce him, I just kind of wanted to go over, since this is the first episode and you guys haven't seen this previously, I just wanted to kind of go over what the vision of the show is. The ultimate goal of this entire show is to learn and to teach. I want to create a positive environment. I don't want any trash talking to the guest. We're putting them in a vulnerable spot. They're going to be shooting live and setting up from scratch in front of the camera. So I want everybody to be supportive to the guests we have. And I want you guys to ask questions. I want everybody to learn as we walk through this process. I appreciate everybody being here. And that's kind of what we're trying to accomplish over the next however long. As long as you guys tune in, we'll keep doing this. So hope you enjoy it. And without further ado, let me welcome our good friend Cece. Drum roll.
Fellas,
Cece.
What's happening?
Good to see you, my friend. How are you this evening?
Good. I appreciate you having me.
I know this guy.
Absolutely.
First one. There's a lot of pressure. I'm feeling it. First one.
I know.
We can't disappoint. Like you said, be nice. Be nice.
Yes. Everybody be nice. We're trying to build a positive environment for all involved. So, Cece, talk to me. What are you thinking about shooting tonight?
So, I'm trying to keep it simple tonight, right? We've talked on the Hangout before that oftentimes when I'm sitting down to do a shot, 1 to 2 hours, pretty easy, can get burned up from start to finish, pretty easily, 1 to 2 hours. So we're gonna keep it simple tonight. I've got an Extreme Sets Deranged Alley Dio version 2 I'm going to use. I do like these. They're really friendly on the budget for folks that don't have the money to get the really lavish dioramas and stuff. And
totally
these
agree.
With space too. I really like, you fold them back up, stick them in the box. Good to go.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to go with those. And the star
and what
of today's
figure?
Shot, star of today's shot. We're going to go with this fella here.
All right.
Oh.
So this is the first time I'm going to be seeing them in hand, truthfully.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some people's pictures of them, but like getting to see it up close and personal and see somebody moving it around and seeing what it can and can't do. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. I tell you what.
You like it?
I've had him out a little bit and messed around with him.
Mm-hmm.
I really love Mezco with some of this comic accurate kind of golden age stuff, if you will. I think I kind of feel like this is kind of along the same lines as the Batman golden age stuff. The same styling, if you will, with the the little larger head that seems to drive everybody crazy and everything. But he's got a very extremely articulated buck. So I think I was really happy with it. A lot of movement, great ankles. How often do you say that about a man, huh? Great ankles.
Every Tuesday. What day is today?
Yeah. Oh, it's just in time. We're in for the Tuesday great ankle.
Cool.
For sure.
So we're shooting Spider-Man. We got an Extreme Sets Dio. What kind of camera do you have?
I have a Canon Rebel.
Cool. Which one?
I think it's a T6i.
Okay. So you're a APS-C shooter. APS-C, so you've got the crop sensor.
Yes.
Great. So for those that aren't familiar with that, you have two types of cameras. You have an APS-C camera, and then you have a full frame camera. An APS-C camera has a cropped sensor, so it's a little bit smaller. And so if you're shooting at 35 millimeters, let's say, you're actually shooting at roughly 50 millimeters. If you have a full frame camera and you're shooting at 35 millimeters, you're shooting at 35 millimeters. So that's what we're referring to there. So
we're 3 minutes in. I learned something already.
There you go, buddy. That's what it's all about. Yeah. So most crop sensors are at about a 1.5 or 1.6 crop ratio. You'll have to take a look at your specific camera. But what you would do is if you're shooting at 35 millimeters, you just multiply that by 1.6. if your camera is a 1.6 crop ratio, and that will show you what focal length you're actually shooting at.
Gotcha.
So, yeah.
Gotcha.
And how many lights do you have?
I have 4. Wait a minute, I lied. 3. I only have 3 currently. But I use I make use of the once again, I'm all about doing this on a budget, folks. I'm not spending a lot of money doing this on a budget, but I like these Ulanzi Lume Cubes.
Yeah.
So I have 3 of these. The only complaint I have about these is the battery life isn't the greatest. You might get 40 minutes or so of continuous light. So what I would highly suggest is, you kind of turn them on, get an idea of what your light looks like, and then turn them off and save it for when you're ready to go with the shot. But I've got 3 bad boys ready to go. I have a 4th one somewhere.
Do you have do they come with the accessories like the barn doors and the snoots and all that?
It's got all these little cool things. It's got the nice little handy pouch. You got your honeycomb thing with all the little colored lights. So I like to make use of the filtered colored lights all the time.
Yeah, great. And it came with the gels and everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, a lot of goodies.
Those are great, and they're super affordable. If anybody is looking, for lights, I highly recommend going that Ulanzi route. They're super affordable, and they do the job really well.
They do. They really do. And if you, stalk Amazon, you can get a really good deal.
No doubt. And they go up for sale also on Ulanzi's website quite often as well too. Like I've grabbed I think I got a 3-pack one time for like $35, I want to say. It was like crazy. Yeah, I saw it and I just acted on it immediately. Yeah.
Does that always ship from China if you buy direct?
I believe so. Yeah.
I've got their fog machine too, but we won't be using that today.
That's great. I just got it about a week ago. I love it. It's like I got to keep myself from using fog in every shot now. You got to hold back.
The first episode is not sponsored by Ulanzi.
They have some good stuff though. They got some good stuff.
They do.
For sure. So let's see. So you got like a table, you got everything set up and you got your camera with you. And
let's take a look. Get the stuff out of the way. So this isn't like where I normally set up. This is kind of my art area normally, if you will. I do a little drawing in my free time. So you can kind of see it there.
Awesome.
So I got my camera set up. I've got the diorama set up.
Great.
A few, can we see that? Got a few props lined up because I don't want to bore you guys with downtime. So
cool. So tell the audience what your shot idea is, like what you want to convey in your shot.
Yeah. So Ian always talks about. Man, I misplaced my phone. Ian always talks about telling a story, right? You talk about that a lot. And I really admire that with your pictures. So I've tried to put a lot more thought into those type of things. That way I go into it with just more than just a shot, but it also gives you kind of a mood and a feeling. So with the new Spider-Man, I kind of thought it'd be kind of cool to kind of start with the end. And we're going to do a Spider-Man quitting shot.
Cool. So just so we're clear, we're talking about like the trash can, like the famous comic panel with the trash can and the clothes in the trash can and him walking away.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool.
We're not going to do the clothes. I'm not cutting them off. We're not doing that.
Just go for it.
Yeah.
Just go for it. You can sew. Stop being a baby. All right, cool. Well, let's go ahead and start getting your stuff laid out on the table. And if you can turn your camera on, what I think where we should start is one thing that I always do that I recommend. And this is something I talk to people quite a bit about through DM. And people don't like to take my word for it, but I'm telling you, this is the way to go. When you turn your camera on, right, and you start setting up while looking through the live view of your camera, it's a huge benefit. You're seeing your picture come to life as you place it. And that's how I get depth. That's how I frame my composition. That's how I do everything. So I think where we should go with this, if you want to go ahead and, oh, cool. So you've got like connectivity to your phone.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Perfect.
So I don't know if you guys can kind of see that. but I'm kind of already
Yeah.
digging the angle that we've got there.
Awesome.
We've just got a few props
So-
in the foreground.
So what I would like for you to do is kind of, I don't want to micromanage you. I want to like you to set up how you would do it without any input.
Yeah.
And then I'd like to take a look at what you did, and we'll go from there and see how we can fine tune the composition and all of that.
Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah.
Sounds good. So while I'm doing this, what do we want to discuss? How about those
You got a
lines?
lot of
MC's not in the crowd, is he? I was gonna say, how about those
Yeah,
lines?
he
I
is.
don't want to rub it in. Is MC in there? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Okay.
a
Well,
lot of upset fans.
Yeah, we won't talk about the Lions then.
Mm.
We won't talk about.
Let's talk about the Ravens then. Oh wait.
Oh man, yeah.
Yeah.
They both kind of choked away those games. You know what I mean? You can say just as much about the guys that won as probably as much as you could the guys that lost. It was a little disappointing.
I actually didn't. I didn't watch either of the games. Honestly, I was probably taking pictures of toys because I'm super cool. I like all the cool stuff. Also,
Yeah, go ahead.
I want to encourage people in the chat to ask questions. As we're talking about things and we're talking about the setup and we're kind of fine tuning things. I want the audience to be able to learn just as much as the guest on each show. So please ask questions. I'm here for you to answer whatever's on your mind. So ask away as that comes up.
I have
You
a
have
quick
a bunch
question.
of, yeah, go for it, bud.
So how we started out with looking through the viewfinder so you can kind of get an idea of how your shot's being set up through the camera. Do you, if someone does have the capability to like tether, would you recommend that more over
Yes.
the viewfinder? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for sure, because it's going to give you a bigger screen.
What's the
And it's, I'm sorry?
What's the difference?
So
What's
tethering is,
you threw a word out there.
tethering is when you plug your camera into an external monitor, basically. So to actually tether, right, in the professional photography world, you'll get a tethering cable and you will tether to a PC, which is being controlled by some software. And then you can trigger everything from your computer. So you can focus, you can do color temperature, you can do everything from the computer, right? And there's multiple softwares you can use. A lot of people use Capture One. But for toy photography, we're not really in a scenario where we need to fire off rapid shots and see perfection. And we're not dealing with clients really. There's nobody in front of the camera that wants to see what you're shooting, right? So the benefit of tethering in our genre is just to get a bigger screen, right? So it's just to be able, you can fine tune your focus. You've got everything set up just on a big screen, and that's the major benefit. Sorry, my dog wants to leave. I apologize, guys. He's going to be doing this all night.
It adds realism to the show.
Yeah, he's bipolar. He's like wants to come in, wants to come out, wants to come in, wants to go out. So
how do you know
that's
you have that capability?
Most of them do.
Googling
Yeah, you can Google it. What I use now, I'm sure Canon has. So I'm a Sony shooter, so I have different. I use different software than you will use because you're a Canon shooter. But I use an app on the iPad called Monitor Plus, and that lets me. So I just plug in USB-C into my camera and USB-C into the iPad, right? And all the data gets transmitted through that USB-C cable, and I have my screen right next to me. And sometimes, like if you're getting in awkward angles or you're getting low with your tripod or whatever, and you might need to get down on your knees or whatever it may be, if you're shooting at a longer focal length and you're further from the figures, it just gives you a bigger screen and gives you a lot more accuracy. So what you got going on? Head sculpt.
I'm putting my unmasked Peter Parker sculpt on there.
You got his
He was
glasses?
it's a good looking
I
fellow.
love those. I saw the pictures of like the bottle glass,
Yeah, the
you
Coke
know,
bottle
and
ones.
like
Yeah.
it actually like magnifies his eyes.
Yeah.
Like,
I
it's
used them to
so
look at
funny.
the paper. I used them to look at the Daily Bugle paper that they gave to see if I could like actually see the
Did you
smaller
really?
words. Yeah. I was like the same market.
Oh, it didn't? Okay. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I guess it's just plastic, right?
Yeah, but it adds to it. It almost makes his eyes look a little bit bigger. So it's you know, it's almost
Yeah.
like that
They're
remember that
curved.
movie,
It's like a
Master of
curved
Disguise?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a curved plastic, so it definitely gives him that bubbled eye.
It's perfect.
Mr. Magoo look.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Now you need
So
just like a buck the size of Vapor, and we could like put his head on there, do teenage
exactly.
Peter.
Yeah.
Don't Google that. Whatever you do, folks.
Yeah, don't do that. Yeah.
Don't Google. Not safe for work. Not safe for work.
So for people for people like that are just beginning and setting up,
Mhm.
um, I know sometimes people kind of work backwards. Like they'll have an idea of what the shot they want to do, and maybe they'll do, I'm very guilty of this, making a diorama and then putting the figures in and doing that. Do
Yeah.
you recommend that uh, you get your posing and your idea, your posing, and everything else done first before you start working in some of these other things?
Yeah, I think that
Your
that's
preset.
a good start, right? I think you can get a general pose going on, and then
Hmm.
as you start setting it up in the frame, it's undoubtedly going to change. So, I mean,
Right.
you're going to fine tune all of the details while looking at your live view, right?
Hmm.
But it's good to get an initial start. So, whatever idea you have, you know, if since we're going with this, like I would get Peter in a roughly walking pose or whatever, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And as I get to the portion where I'm starting to set things up while looking at the live view, that's when you start fine tuning. You know, really, you know, you look into like, oh, I need to rotate that hand, or you know,
Hmm.
his shoulder is blocking. You know, it could be any number of things.
Right.
So you just kind of want to you really just want to dive into that frame. One thing I learned, so I did a little bit of work on movies,
Hmm.
and um, when I was doing that work, one thing that blew my mind, so I was a day player on a movie called Lincoln. I don't know if you guys ever saw that, but on Lincoln, there's that opening scene where Daniel Day-Lewis is sitting in a chair and the camera's
Hmm.
slowly
Hmm.
coming in, right? And I was there for that scene, and the sheer amount of chaos going all around the camera, outside the
Yeah.
camera, the sheer amount of people, bounce cards, lights, everything going on. And for me, it was a big realization because you know what? None of it matters because it's not in the frame. Like the only thing that you are trying to communicate is what's inside that frame, right?
Right.
So you get your starting idea. You get your
Yeah.
starting idea. What are you reading? I see you
Adam said,
laughing.
"So are you naturally this beautiful, or is this a
Oh,
filter?"
that's definitely a filter.
Okay.
But yeah, so I would say the short answer is get your figure in the idea that's in your head, and then start building it inside of the frame, and then fine tune the details.
Right.
Right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Yeah. Maybe to take one more step back because I didn't think about this. I know it all depends on the type of shot that you're trying to go for, the depth of field. Is there, as a beginner, because I think that's what we're all trying to cover right now, uh,
Hmm.
is there a recommended focal length that you would recommend a beginner start out with? I know this shot
Um,
has a lot to it, and
yeah.
so you would probably use something, but like, would you have a preferred focal length that you would recommend to somebody that's just starting out?
So someone who's just starting out, what I would recommend is to have a zoom lens. I wouldn't recommend getting a prime lens Jimmy Pop, what's up, buddy?
Can we describe what focal length is, or explain
Sure.
what focal means?
Sure. Focal length is so on your lens. Here, I've got a lens right here. So this is my 70 to 200, and you can see these little numbers right here. That is your focal length. So if I turn it right here, you can see I'm at 70 millimeters.
Okay.
Right? So that's going to be as wide as this lens will go. Now, as I turn it, it'll start to zoom in all the way up to 200 millimeters. So that 70 millimeter to 200 millimeter range is the focal length of this specific lens. So if you have a zoom lens, right, one that's able to zoom in and zoom out, it should have a series of numbers on the lens itself, and the lowest number would be your widest focal length, and the higher number is going to be your most narrow focal length. So what I would recommend is most cameras, if you buy a camera, generally it's going to come with a kit lens that's a variable zoom lens, so it's going to have a variety, and that's going to give a beginner more range to work with, right? They're not stuck at 50 millimeters, right? So with a prime lens doesn't have any variability. So you have to move the camera to zoom in and zoom out. You see what I mean? You have to physically move the camera further from your subject or closer to your subject to zoom in or zoom out. Getting a variable lens, something like 24 to 70, or a lot of kit lenses are like 18 to 35 or 18 to 50. It just depends on what camera you got. That is going to give you the most range, and it's going to be the most forgiving, right? So you'll be able to set up, and you'll kind of be able to dial in your focal length to kind of see what works best for you. So I would start with just a kit lens. You know, you don't have to spend a lot of money. Well, if you're in photography, get ready, because it's a money pit. Like you're gonna be spending money. But you know, if you made your first camera purchase or whatever, if you have a variable lens, you have everything you need to start there. So let's take a look, CC.
This is kind of where we're at right now. Well, not kind of. This is where we're at right now.
Gotcha. Cool. So do you have the rule of thirds grid? Are you familiar with the rule of thirds?
No, sir. You found the right guy when you wanted a beginner.
All right, buddy. So rule of thirds is a composition rule in photography. Now, keep in mind that all rules are meant to be broken.
Okay.
However, there's a great fundamental. It's an excellent fundamental of building your composition.
Okay.
Now, if you let me turn my camera on, actually, because I have the rule of thirds grid on my camera at all times, and you may have access to this. You'll have to dig through your menu.
Okay.
But hopefully, I might have to get like a light to actually shine into this, so it's not. Can you guys see the grid?
Yes.
You see those black lines, CC?
Yep.
All right. So you have vertical lines, 3 vertical lines, one on the right side of the frame, one in the center, and one on the left.
Yep.
Okay. That is your rule of thirds. So typically, a more interesting composition, you're going to line up on, so let me see if I can do this in camera. So this line right here, you see that line?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want your subject on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or on this one, right? Mm-hmm. So with this composition of Peter walking away, what I think you should do is I think that trash can should be on this third, and then Peter should be on this third, right? So since you don't have that directly set up on your camera right now, just kind of visualize it in your head. So break it up into break your screen up into thirds. So you have the left side of the frame,
Mhm.
you have the center of the frame, and then you have the right side of the frame. So we're going to put that trash can on the right side of the frame, and we're going to put Peter on the left side of the frame right here. So if you're able to show us what that looks like. Oh, excellent. Yeah, beautiful, Paige. Thank you for that. That is the rule of thirds grid. So you can see in this example how they put their subject right on that left third. So this is a handy, very handy tool, and most cameras have it. If you go into your menu, you should be able to find, I don't know how Canon has it labeled,
Yeah.
but you should be able to find a thirds grid.
I'm just trying to hold this up to see how it looks like on the.
Yeah, let me see here. Are you able to
have him on?
zoom in on CC? Sorry.
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this is great. Thank you for pulling this up, Paige. So you can see how the subject is directly on the third. So let me see your, can you hold your phone up to the screen again so we can see?
Yeah, so when you say left frame, you're not talking about my left, it'd be
camera left.
Camera left.
Right. So
gotcha.
Peter, yeah. And right now you have, it looks like a Dutch angle going on, which a Dutch angle is when you kind of cock your camera off to the side.
Yep.
Let's straighten it out for now, and we'll dial in our composition. And then if we feel like we need to add a tilt, we can do that. But let's start from a blank canvas.
Gotcha.
So a Dutch tilt is an effect you can add for drama, or it kind of simulates like if you're say you're watching a movie, right, and it's a car chase and the camera's in the passenger seat, right, and the camera's like moving around because the car is moving around, right. A Dutch tilt kind of simulates that action by tilting it. You can also use it in other ways. You can use it for like a sense of eeriness or a sense of mystery, or you know, like I'm thinking like, think of like a man walking through a doorway and the light is shining through him and he's in silhouette, and you got like that shadow coming out towards the camera like this. You can put a bit of a Dutch angle on it, right, to add to that sense of mystery. But you always want to have purpose. You want to have a reason why you're doing your Dutch tilt. So I always start from a blank canvas, you know, which is just going to be straight on.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot to ask you, do you have any of those extension tubes connected right now, or you?
I don't have
do.
anything
What do you have
right now.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
Nothing connected right now.
It's a nice segue for a question.
Yeah.
Son of asked a question a little bit earlier about extension tubes. He said, can I put extension tubes on a macro lens? You
can, but you wouldn't want to. An extension tube is to simulate a macro lens. So here's the benefit of a macro lens is you can use a macro lens as a regular lens, or you can use it as a macro lens, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be sharper. It's native, like it's built to do what it does. The benefit of an extension tube is it's cheap, very cheap, and you can simulate macro shots with extension tubes. So you wouldn't want to attach a extension tube to a macro lens, because if you have a macro lens, you don't need to simulate macro. You're already equipped for it, right? So what you want to do is attach extension tubes to your regular lens to achieve macro shots. So it's really the difference between, you know, a good macro lens could cost you thousands of dollars. You can probably get them for as cheap as $300, somewhere in there, but you can get an like 3 extension tubes for like $25. So that's what we're talking, and it achieves the same desired effect. So I have a whole range of lenses, and I don't have any macro lenses. I use only extension tubes, and it works fine for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, obviously, like if I had some money to drop on a really nice, sharp, also macro lens, I would do it. But who's not struggling these days? So, you know, money is valuable, and I'd rather buy toys. So that's
So
the
I know.
benefit of, go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. You said that's the benefit of.
That's the benefit of the extension tubes, is the price point to
Mhm.
achieve a similar effect.
So I know we've talked a lot about camera bodies and lenses and attachments and stuff like that too. And just like you said, a lot of people may not be able to afford those things. And
Yeah.
so, and especially with like collecting toys on top of it, um, eh, eh, I've seen a lot of people get great results just with their phones as well. I think
Yes, absolutely.
that's,
And you know
yeah.
what? The iPhone, I don't know about Android because I don't have Android, but iPhone has built-in macro as well. So
Yeah.
if
I
you
do.
don't have, yeah, if you do not have a camera right now, I would say the goal would be to eventually get one, because you're going to have far more control over your shot
Hmm.
with a DSLR or a mirrorless camera than you
Yeah.
ever will with your iPhone. But you can do some amazing things with an iPhone, and I mean that's really the way to go if you're an absolute beginner with no experience at all. You know, like there's so much you got to buy to do this hobby, right? You got to buy
Yeah.
diodes, you got to buy that action figures, you got to buy props, accessories, you got to buy
Yeah.
lenses, you got to buy cameras, you know. So it can seem overwhelming for a beginner. So I don't think there's anything wrong with doing it with your phone. But I think that everybody should strive to eventually do it on a camera, because the quality of your shot is going to be greatly increased. A lot of phones have digital noise reduction. There's a lot of like software in the phone that is doing calculations for you, right?
Hmm.
Where with a camera, you dial in all those settings. So you have direct control of your highlights, you have direct control of your shadows, you have direct control of your midtones. The point is to have control, you know,
Right.
where your phone is doing all these calculations for you to do what it thinks is best for you. And the ultimate goal is for you to have the control over it, to be the artist you want to be. So
Right.
I would say the goal is to move towards using a camera, but definitely it's totally possible on a phone.
Yeah.
Do,
This is a great comment, and this goes into something that when I first started doing taking pictures and stuff like that, this goes
mhm.
with the advice I was given. There was a girl, and she would just take me out, and we would just do walkabouts and shoot a lot.
Yeah.
And I would tell her, I was like, "Well, I'm gonna go buy a camera," and she's like, "No." She's like, "Let's just take the next month, and you shoot with your phone. You learn the basics, and then you'll also learn your limitations because you're going to outgrow your iPhone. You might want to do
Hmm.
night photography. This is back, a couple of years, years ago,
Right.
and you can't. It's not like the cameras now." And she would say, "You're going to outgrow that camera, and then when you upgrade your camera, you're going to be able to do some of those things creatively, like you said." So she's like, "Just start with what you have, go through that, learn the basics, and then move up."
Hmm.
Because some
Yeah.
people just go and they buy a camera and they go, "I don't get this," and you just wasted money.
That was me. That was me. I literally, like, I started in astrophotography, so taking pictures of the stars through
Yeah.
telescopes, and I had no clue what I was doing. I just knew that I needed a camera because I couldn't do it with my phone, no matter how much I tried. And I
Yeah.
knew from seeing online that other people did it. And I went to a pawn shop and found the cheapest camera I could get my hands on. And that was my first camera. It was, it was a Canon something T3, I think.
Hmm.
It was many years ago now, but I had no clue, and then I had to learn to use this thing from scratch, and it was a process for sure, and it was frustrating at first,
Yeah.
you know. But once you get your head wrapped around the fundamentals, it's everything else falls into place. So
Yeah. That's what she emphasized. There was two really good questions.
yeah, let's hear
Um,
them.
One, I'll backtrack on the other one because we kind of touched on it, but this is a good one. Right here. What would be a good starter camera, or how do I look for a good starting camera?
That is a great question. For a good starting camera, I would say at this point in time, it doesn't really matter what brand you get. If it's Sony, if it's Canon, if it's Nikon, everybody has pretty much caught up with the technology. So the first thing I would do is look for your price point. Look for your price point. Set a budget, see what you're willing to spend, and then look at what is in that price range that you're willing to spend. I would also say don't buy just a body. Buy something that comes with a kit lens, right? Because if you just have a camera body, that's going to be no use to you. You need a lens as well. So buy something that is bundled. And if you go on Amazon, you can find tons of these bundles. They'll come with a camera, a lens, like an SD card. They'll come with like little tripods, all kinds of things you won't even need. But you do need a camera, an SD card, and a lens. Those are the three minimums. And then the fourth thing I would recommend is a tripod for toy photography. You really need to be shooting on a tripod. So I wish I could tell you, give you an exact answer, like, hey, go with the Sony a6000 or go with the Rebel T7i or whatever. But it's really going to depend on what your budget is, what you can spend. But definitely make sure that you get a camera that comes with a lens, a body, and an SD card at the minimum. And then the second thing I would say is get a mirrorless camera. DSLRs they're not dinosaurs yet, but the future is moving mirrorless. So I would not recommend investing into a DSLR. So just a quick vocabulary lesson here. DSLR, light enters the lens, right? Goes to the body of the camera. There is a mirror in the camera, right? So when you look through the viewfinder, you're seeing what is reflected in this mirror, right? When you snap the shutter button, that mirror flips up, exposes the sensor, and then flips back down. That's a DSLR. A mirrorless camera has no mirror, right? So it's the lens directly to the sensor. And the benefit of mirrorless cameras are you can see your photo in real time. So as you make adjustments, as you change your shutter speed, as you change your aperture, as you change all of this stuff and you're making adjustments, you can see that in real time through the viewfinder and through the live view. You can see your histogram, you can see all your levels. So I would recommend whoever that was that asked that question, I would look for mirrorless that fits your budget with a lens, a body, and a SD card.
That was Lord Quacks.
Lord Quacks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's where I would go. I can't give you an exact. Yeah. Let's see your shot here. Can you zoom in on him for me? Thank you. All right. So that composition already looks better. But what I am seeing is that there's a lot of wasted negative space. Do you see that negative space to the left of Peter's head? What I would like to see is, can you actually bring your camera lower so that that trash can, so maybe the top of Spidey's mask there is at the top of the frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you're kind of shooting at an angle to get Peter in the shot as well. Does that make sense the way I worded that?
Yep.
So kind of bring it down so that the dumpster or trash can or whatever it is fills in pretty much the top to bottom.
Yep.
And then have Peter, see how much of Peter you can get in the frame. If you can't get Peter in the frame, I'm going to suggest instead, so this is landscape orientation, tilting your camera up would be portrait orientation. So we're going to see if we can get him in landscape. Excuse me, if we can't, let's try portrait.
Oh, we want to go. Let's see how low.
And yeah, and here's another thing. The reason we're going low is every single day as you're walking around and you're seeing things with your two eyeballs, you're seeing them at eye level, right? That's how all humans in the world experience the world, is at eye level, right? So if you're looking at the grass, right, you're seeing it from above and you're seeing all of the grass. But if you're just outside taking a picture of the grass, you never want to shoot it standing up. You want to get that camera low, down to the ground, and you want to see, yeah, if we can zoom in on him for me, Paige. Can you lift your camera? See, already we've got a more dynamic composition, right? So you've got a foreground at this point, right? So your dumpster, is it a dumpster or a trash can? We got some reflections that are making it a little bit hard to see.
Yeah.
So you've got dumpster in the foreground and you got Peter walking away. The story is clear. So at this point, what I would do, Cece, is grab focus, right? So what you want to do is you want to focus on Peter's head. So make sure, typically what you want to focus on is like you want to zoom in to an eye and really grab sharp focus on an eye. Are you manual focus or are you in automatic focus right now?
Autofocus right now.
Great. Do you have the ability to switch your lens over to manual?
Yes.
Great. If you can do that, and do you have a hot button for, or do you have a way to zoom in? Use your digital zoom. So not use your lens to zoom in, but use your camera sensor to zoom in. So if not,
mine is the plus. You know how like I have a Nikon and I push the plus button and it zooms in. It doesn't change the focal length. It just and that way you can tag sharp it.
Is your because here's the thing about
I have a plus,
autofocus.
sure. I just
is once we get into the lighting portion of this and we start lighting your shot, if your light hits that lens, it may try and grab focus on it. If it's on autofocus, it may shift all of your focus out. And you might think that you're in focus, but the best way to do it is in manual. And I'm going to let my bipolar dog in, guys. Sorry.
Turn the autofocus off.
Yeah, and so most cameras have the ability to use a digital zoom. And so obviously you guys aren't going to see much because my camera is pointed at basically my shoulder. But I have a hotkey that I push. And when I push that, it brings up this orange box, right? And I'll try and keep this as steady as I can. But I'm going to come over here. I can't tell what that is right here. But what I can do, hold on real quick. I've got an extension tube attached to my lens, so I won't be able to get focus from this far away. Take that off. So I can hit my hotkey. And right, so you see how my camera just zoomed in? I didn't touch the lens at all. That's just a digital zoom. And then I can do it one more time. So I can get really tight in there. And then what I can do, sorry, I'm trying to find something backwards here to actually grab focus onto. I can start racking my focus and then I can find where it's the sharpest and then I just leave it. And then I just leave it. Once I've attained focus, I don't touch it again, right? And that way you're not in autofocus. None of your camera software is going to trick itself. It's all tied to the ring. You know you're in focus. And then when you go lights out and you start fine tuning your light, you don't need your light to attain focus because you already did it in the step before. Does that make sense?
Can you walk me through that, how you did the manual focus again? As far as once you use your hotkey?
Yeah. So it's going to be, you did find the hotkey? So what you're going to do is whatever button it is on your camera, it's not going to be the same for mine, right? But, and it may look different, but basically, so I just hit my hotkey, right? You see that little orange box that came up?
Yep.
You're going to navigate to Peter's eye. Let's say that's Peter's eye, right? Then you're going to push the button and it's going to zoom in on Peter's eye.
Yeah.
Right. And then while looking at your live view, you're going to move your focus. Sorry, it's hard. It's really hard to do this, as you can imagine. You're gonna start moving your focus until you've got a sharp focus on Peter's eye. Did that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
I usually take at least about 25 over the shoulder shots. I'm trying to practice to become a trick shooter. So I
Yeah.
do
How's that
25 over
going?
shoulders. It's going pretty well. I let the camera do a lot of it, but I've mastered over the shoulder. I'm still working under armpit.
Oh,
Those are casual.
just yeah.
Yeah.
Well, next
Great
year,
stalking shots.
the crotch shots are going to be the ones to check out.
Yes, I am working on those, but my flexibility isn't that great yet.
Yeah,
So
we'll take a few tips from Spidey.
I'll get there though.
So basically, the steps that we've taken so far, for those that are still with us, what you want to do is basically you want to get your pose down, you want to get your basic idea, right? Then you want to build your composition while looking inside of your live view, okay? So step one, get like the basic pose of what you want to do. Step two, start building your composition with all of your room lights on, everything, right? Once you're happy with your composition, step three, attain focus. Get sharp focus on your subject. And then once you do that, we're going to go lights out and we're going to start discussing some lighting. Hey, Pablo, how you doing, bud? So Pablo just joined us. Sorry, guys. I get really involved in these and I don't see the chat. So, you know, I'm seeing people coming in here and there, but if I haven't said hello to everybody, I appreciate everybody who did tune in. And I know Pablo's coming in hot off his own show that he's got on Tuesday. So thank you for taking the time, sir. So how you looking, CC? Did you get your focus?
I think I got focus. I'm reconnecting my camera now so I can get back. Some of those options don't seem to be available when I'm connected with the camera.
Sure. And you know, this is something you can take all the time in the world to discover. What I would do is real simple these days, just get on YouTube and ask YouTube how to do it, and 10 million videos will come up. So yeah, that looks great. What f-stop are you at right now? So your aperture.
7.1.
7.1. So if you increase your aperture, you're going to get a little more focus. So when I say increase your aperture, what I mean is take your number up higher, right? So every camera has a maximum aperture that you can go to. So just for giggles, and this is going to make it really dark, right? We're not going to be able to see once you do this, but let's see how high your aperture will go. So can you take
24
your
is the highest it goes.
Okay, that's really high. Wow, excellent.
But like you
let's
said,
see what like
it's very
let's
dark.
see what like F. Yeah, so at this point, at this point, take your shutter speed down, and this is why you want to be on a tripod, right? Is because we're going to be doing longer exposures to get everything in focus and to get everything you want in focus, right? You're going to have to increase your aperture. Once you do that, it's going to darken your photo. So then you have to lower your shutter speed, right? Yeah. And when you lower your shutter speed to let more light in, what's going to happen is if you're not shooting on a tripod, you're going to be shaking your camera and everything's going to be blurry. So
that's it.
Yeah. So that's like F16. Is that what you said?
F22.
Oh, cool. I actually shoot at F22 quite a bit. So here's the thing. The reason you would choose a low aperture, so something like F2.8, F4, something like that, if you're doing a portrait shot, right? And you're wanting like a creamy, so when you get that out of focus look, that's called bokeh. right? Bokeh, right? So if you want your background bokeh and you really want to separate your subject from your background, that's when you want to choose a lower f-stop. So something like f2.8, f4, f7, somewhere in there, right? If you're trying to get more of your foreground, your middle ground and background in focus, right? If you don't want as much separation. So we want to tell the story of, we want the viewer to be able to see the mask in the dumpster, right? If it's too bokeh out and it's too blurry and you're at too low of an f-stop, you're not going to be able to tell that that's a mask, right? You're not going to be able to tell it's in a trash can. So that's the theory on why we increased the f-stop, was to get more definition of your storytelling elements, right? So because we increased the f-stop, we had to lower the shutter speed, right?
Yep.
And it's really hard to tell from the phone up to the laptop camera, but are you happy with what it's looking like right now? Are there any adjustments you want to make before we go lights out? Like it, are you seeing anything that bugs you?
I'm almost wondering if the mask isn't too blurry in the foreground.
Okay. So you're at f22?
Yeah.
Okay. So the only way you're going to fix that is by pulling your camera further back, further away from the subject. Pablo, I shot a lot at f2.8, but I do sometimes shoot f5 or f10, but with my macro, I tend to shoot mainly at f2.8. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. I have a completely different approach, and this is a good segue to say there is no one right approach, right? So this show is to show everybody how me personally, how I approach a shot, right? I can't speak for anybody else, but you're going to talk to other photographers, and other photographers are going to have different approaches. So because I'm doling this advice out, it's because I have a platform to do it, and it doesn't always mean I'm right. You know what I'm saying, guys? So this is just a show to showcase how I approach a photo, and to kind of, try and help people through what I have learned. So you're going to meet other people that have different approaches, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. So with Pablo saying that he shoots at f2.8, like, I'm actually really surprised by that, actually, because I could see that if you had everything on the same plane, but if you're layering things, right, you're going to start losing definition, because you're going to start getting at f2.8, you're getting a very shallow depth of field, which means a very small sliver of your frame is going to be in focus, right?
Yeah. Looks like he varies, like you said, but sometimes I shoot up to 5.5 or f5 to f10, depending on what you're doing.
A lot of my shots, even though so when I put that extension tube on, a lot of my tight shots that you see, most of you guys in here are familiar with my photography. That's why you're here. But you know that I tend to shoot very tight and up close and personal. And I'm oftentimes between f16 and f22, typically. So you're going to, find different things for different scenarios, for sure. But back to CC. What were you saying about your what's inside the frame that was bothering you?
I was a little concerned that the mask was a little too blurred to be able to really.
Got you. So that's right. So what you can do is you can pull your camera a little bit further back, right? Get further away from your subject, and then zoom in a little bit. That's one way you can do it, but you're going to have to move your camera if you want to get that more in focus. Now, you can go all the way to f24 to the maximum aperture your camera allows, right? You'll lower your shutter speed again, right? And you'll see you can see if that gives you the definition you're looking for before you move your camera. But typically when you're in that situation, it means that the subject is too close to your lens to be able for it to achieve focus, right?
Okay, so it's like I use to shoot mainly 2.8.
Ah.
But now I shoot different f-stops. You can see setups on my post. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, every shot calls for something different, right? So just because CC sets up this today doesn't mean the shot that he sets up tomorrow or next week, he's not going to keep all the settings the same. It's going to change with every single shot you do.
Yeah. So we
And
we talked about focal lengths, and we talked about different camera bodies, different methods to shoot. I don't know if we mentioned this before, but let's say you have somebody that's just gotten their camera. They moved up. Is there a recommended mode that you would say to start with, like aperture priority, shutter? I'm throwing it out
manual.
there.
Yes,
but I'm throwing
manual.
all of them out there. Oh, well, you would tell people to jump right into manual
And
with no experience?
jump right into correct. Yep.
Mm.
I would say as soon as you get your first camera, the first thing you need to do before you even pick up your camera is you need to get on YouTube and you need to look at what aperture, shutter speed, and ISO are and what the relationship between those are, because you adjust aperture, you're going to have to adjust shutter speed. All three are connected, right? So it's like scales. You move one scale and one tips up, right? So if you want level scales, right, you need to learn how to balance these settings. So the first thing you need to do if you're just getting your very first camera is look up the relationship between aperture, shutter speed, and ISO before you even touch your camera. And then once you understand that, dive in. But the reason you want to start in manual is because those other modes are crutches that are going to keep you from learning the fundamentals, right? And once you understand the fundamentals, you're unstoppable. So the best way is to just dive in full manual mode and don't use any of the other smart modes as crutches. And I would recommend that for any beginner. Yeah.
Not P mode?
Any beginner.
Auto mode, you don't want them. You don't want the
don't
flash
shoot on
popping
auto.
up.
If you're going to shoot on auto mode, just stick with your iPhone, you know?
Yeah. I figured I would because somebody's gonna get a camera, and I know some people have it's a steeper learning curve to shoot a manual.
It is, but that's why I'm telling you.
Learn more. Yeah.
Yes. You learn the full functionality. Now, those modes have a purpose. So when I was doing concert photography, when you're doing concert photography, you're in very low light situations, right? Yeah. So what I would do is I would set it in a mode so that when I would just dial my ISO, I would constantly have to move my ISO up and down to get the shot, to get enough light into the camera. So when I would dial in my ISO, it would change my aperture and my shutter speed to compensate for that ISO change. The reason I did that is because concerts, you got to get the shot. You're moving all around, back and forth. You need to get the shot. You don't have time to sit there and look at and dial in each individual setting, right? You got to be on the move and you got to be getting the shot. With toy photography, you have all the time in the world. You don't have to get that shot right away. You can sit down and you can take your time and you can get it right.
Yeah. Concerts have a lot of changing lighting conditions too. I learned that on the hard way. Yeah, you have to, and then if you get somebody singing a certain song and an artist invokes a certain emotion during that part of the song and you miss it, it's almost like wedding photography. You don't want to miss the first kiss, you don't want to miss the first dance, and if you got Axl Rose, going Sweet Child of Mine, he's like, and you miss it, it sucks. So it's like there's a lot of factors involved. Like you said, it's more controlled with toy photography.
Yes. That's one reason why I love toy photography, because it's almost like you're a little movie director. You set up your scene, you set up your lighting, you have full control of your actor, you have full control of your weather, you have full control of every single element. So you can really take your time and dial everything in. Oh yeah, League of Extraordinary Sixthers does concert photography.
Yeah.
Uh,
Ed, a couple quick questions, really quick,
Sure.
unless you want to do like CC check where he's at. But,
Don't do a CC check yet.
okay.
Copy
So,
you.
I'm changing hands and moving him around. I knocked him over.
so first question was, but also as a good reference point. Oh, sorry, that wasn't a question. This is the one. What would you recommend shooting, RAW or JPEG?
Raw. Great question. Raw. Dude,
Yeah.
if you are going to buy a camera,
Yeah.
you have to be shooting in RAW. Okay. RAW, here's the difference between RAW and JPEG. And this is for beginners, obviously. I know we have some people in the chat that know this stuff, but for those that don't, JPEG. So let's talk about sound for a second. Come here, buddy. Sound is a waveform. Okay.
Yeah.
When you have audio engineers, let's go back to the concert analogy, right? Sometimes the highs of the waveform, see how I'm going above the frame, right? Sometimes the highs go too high and sometimes the lows go too low. So they'll add what's called a compressor. And that compressor smushes the waveform so that it always stays inside of the frame, right? And gives a stable waveform, right? Now, with JPEG, what JPEG does is it has already compressed that image file of yours, right? Whereas RAW gives you the full waveform. So sometimes your highlights, right, might be up here in the waveform and you can't see them and it looks bad, right? Sometimes they may be down here in the black point and it could be way black. But once you take it into editing software like Lightroom or Photoshop or whatever you prefer, right? And you start bringing those highlights down, all of a sudden, all of that detail you had lost, right? Or it looks like you lost, all that data is still there. It's still there if you shoot in RAW. Now, if you shoot in JPEG and you got your lighting a little bit off and a little bit of that waveform was going above here, so your highlights were blown out, once you bring it into Lightroom or Photoshop or your editing source, whether you're doing it on a mobile app or whatever, no matter what, your waveform has been clipped. It's gone. That data is gone. You cannot retrieve it. You can't come back from that. So if your highlights are a little bit too hot and they went above the frame a little bit, right? I'm just using this as an analogy. But if you went above it, right, when you try and recover that data, you can't. You can't. And what's going to happen is it's just going to be a solid white highlight with no data in it whatsoever. There's no data inside of it. And you can bring that highlight all the way down. It's still going to be a white spot. It's going to be a little bit darker of a white spot, but you're never going to recover details. So that's the benefit of shooting RAW. So the first step you need to do is put your phone into, or your camera into RAW. Dude, that looks really good. I personally can't tell because of the format of this whether you're in focus or not, but you'll be able to tell because you're not looking through a computer screen. Do you have sharp focus on Peter?
It looks good.
Cool.
I think it looks, I mean, that's just it, but I think it looks good.
I think so too. I think you have a dynamic composition there. You're on the rule of thirds that we talked about, right? So your dumpster's on.
That's one to remember. I'm taking notes on that one. Rule of thirds.
Yes, there's all different composition. There's the golden triangle. There's the Fibonacci sequence. You know, the.
Are we allowed to say golden triangle?
Yeah, some advanced stuff. You're gonna have shooting.
There's all different ones, but the rule of thirds is like the most basic fundamental, and every one of your compositions, until you understand how to break that rule, you should stick to the rule. Right?
I like it. I like it.
So my question for you is, do you have the ability, so once we go lights out and we start messing with the lighting, do you have the ability to turn your camera around so the audience can view you doing the lights as we talk through this?
Yes. Yeah, I just got the iPad here, so we can kind of set that iPad in position where everybody can kind of see what we're doing.
Yeah, so let's do
Without
that and go
knocking over
lights
my tray
out.
of hands. Don't want to knock over my tray of hands.
Let's talk lighting. Yes, sir. That's my specialty. I mean,
Yes,
I think that's the one thing, that's the most compliments that I seem to get is like,
Let's
oh man, you're lighting.
don't get too carried away thinking I'm going to have a lot of different lighting effects.
Well, so here's the thing. You have 3 lights, you said, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what we're going to do is
I'm up too high. Let's drop him down a little bit.
You are wearing pants, right? Just kidding.
I am wearing pants.
all right. So
As far as you know.
first
I am
step
wearing
is take
pants.
those off. No, I'm just
No. We're past 8
Now
minutes.
we're talking.
So we're good.
Now's a party.
Now it becomes a
How was that?
You know,
Can
a
you kind of
Patreon.
see what I'm doing, or you want a better shot?
if we can be able to, so your camera is right in the center, right? So
Right.
are you able to sit it like off to the side so we can kind of look from a side view?
Yep.
I don't know if you have space on your table over there or not.
Yep.
but-
Yep. Let me get this. We got this. We got
Cool,
this, folks.
cool.
We got it. I don't need the close up yet.
Okay. I would also like to point out during this session that CC has had 0 figure drops.
He had one.
He did have one?
Yeah, he said he did. We didn't see it
Yeah.
live on camera, but he did. He ratted on himself.
I did.
On camera is the only count, the stat count. It has to be
Oh,
on
okay.
camera.
Nothing on camera yet.
We got to point out some of this, the trials and tribulations. I think, a lot of times, I think.
Hopefully everyone feels better about.
Oh yeah, because
Hey,
you get to
Maz,
see
let's
this
see
in real
Maz join
time.
see Maz and Zach, Sequential Plastic, Holland Toy Flicks. Thank you guys for joining in. I appreciate you guys.
That's kind of the angle I really want to get. Can I get that angle?
Yeah, I think that'll be okay.
Without dropping.
Yeah,
Yeah, that way you can see all of it. Well, can you
if you can tip down a little
down? Yeah, down a little bit.
Yeah, there you go. We can work with that.
Yeah, there you go.
Now I just got to find a way to get it to stay there. Bear with me.
No problem. But while you're doing that, Cece, do you have tripods for your lights, or do you?
I do.
How do you tip? Okay, great.
I do. I got some little cheap tripods I got off Amazon too. Oh,
Uh-oh. First time viewer, welcome. Welcome to the show.
So when I was doing this stuff live on Instagram by myself, like this is where I'd start getting all the anxiety and everything. I'd be like, everybody's watching me. I can't get this angle right. Nobody can see what I'm doing. Yeah. Which is why I wanted to move to this format. And I'm appreciative of you guys joining me to make this happen.
Thank you for having us, man. Yeah, there you go. Oh, a little bit down.
Oh, come on. Come on. You can do it.
Hey, Cece, you got prune face coming?
I did not. Don't tell Paige, but I didn't order prune face.
Blasphemy.
Don't
Killing
tell
me.
Paige.
2-show suspension.
Don't tell Paige. How's that?
Just kidding.
I don't have to tell him
Just
because
kidding.
you just did. But
How's that?
yeah, that looks perfect. That looks perfect, Cece.
Okay.
So quick recap. So our step number 1 was basic posing, right? Step number 2 was setting up inside of the live view, right? Setting up inside while looking at the live view. So that is so important. I can't understate that enough. Set your shot up inside of the live view. Don't look at your setup and then start moving your camera around and try and find a spot. Set up while looking at the live view, right? Because all that matters is what's in the frame. Step number 3, we gain focus. Step number 4, we're going lights out. We're going to light this bad boy.
Lights out. Here we go. Ready, folks?
Yes,
Here
sir.
we go. Lights out.
So I don't know what kind of tripods you have. Are you able to get light above and behind Peter?
Ooh, we got dark.
Really quick, what was step 3 again for you again? Step 3.
Gain focus, grab focus, make sure your focus is sharp. It's best to be in manual focus and use your digital zoom to zoom into the eye and grab focus.
We thinking just white light?
Yeah. Once we see you lit, we can talk about white balance. But yeah, let's just start with white light.
And you said we want light behind and in front of here?
Yeah, so above it. So look at me, CC. I'm going to try and get my head in the right spot. But are you looking at me?
Yes.
You see this little triangle of light underneath my eye?
Yes.
That's called Rembrandt lighting. Okay. Now, Rembrandt was a famous painter a long time ago that Generation Z probably doesn't know about yet.
Okay.
But he was famous for the lighting in his portraits, right? He got this really natural lighting in the portraits he was painting. And one common denominator in pretty much all of his paintings was you see this little triangle below the eye. So it's going to depend on your tripod if you can get light above and behind him. But what you're going to want to do is kind of shoot across the bridge. And what I recommend doing, CC, is while you're just holding the light, is kind of moving it so you can find that position where you can shoot across the bridge of the nose and find that little triangle of light. And if you have a snoot, you might need to use the snoot a little bit. And I'll give you a little hint. Your light should be kind of facing your camera, right? It should not be, the light should not be 100% pointed at the figure, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's another concept called feathering your light. So light exits in a cone, or maybe I should do it from above, right? Light exits in a cone, so the light is shooting down, okay? If my fingers are the edge of the light, you want to try and light your figure with the edge of the cone. That's going to give you a sharper, a softer, more subtle light that's going to be easier on the eyes and less likely to blow out your camera.
Okay.
And if you can't attain it live on the spot, you know, what I want, basically, I just want to put the idea in your head so you know to look for it in the future. But this little triangle of light, a lot of people, I get so many compliments on my lighting, and sometimes it's just as easy as putting in Rembrandt light. And a lot of people don't know about it because they haven't been educated about it. But sometimes it's just as simple as just doing a little bit of Rembrandt lighting on your figure, and people will just start being like, your light is amazing, and they don't even know why, right? Okay. It's just the perfect light that Rembrandt discovered, and he put it in pretty much all of his paintings. If you Google a Rembrandt painting, you'll see that little triangle under one of the eyes. So now that it's on your radar, if you can't attain it on the spot with everybody watching you, it's okay. But I wanted to educate you on it and give you that as something to look for in the future.
Okay.
So the first thing you want to do with your first light is basically light your figure. If you have the ability to, what I typically do is I do a combination of two lights on my figures. I'll do the Rembrandt light, and then I'll come behind with some rim light. Are you familiar with rim light? Okay. I'll explain it in case there's someone in the audience who does not know, but rim light is just when you place a light behind your subject and you'll get this little rim of light. I don't know if I can reproduce it here on camera on my bald head, but here, let's try it. That's not plugged in. So, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to produce it with this. Well, actually, can you see this light right here? That's kind of rim light, a little bit. It's going to be hard. I mean, this is actually really harder, and I hope nobody's going to screenshot this and use it against me later. But yeah, great. Oh, you have Rembrandt right there. That's beautiful. I forget, Paige, that you have the ability to
I didn't want to.
screen share. That makes this so much better than me moving a light like a halo around my head.
Yeah, I didn't want to. I didn't want to jump over what you were saying, but I was like,
No
maybe
worries. Yeah.
there's a visual that can kind of help.
Yeah.
Question for, I guess, beginners. When you, here's that Rembrandt, the rim lighting example that you were asking about. So when you're starting to light your scene, do you start off at a lower, or do you just blast it with light
I
and
start
adjust
low.
accordingly? You start low?
I start low. That's a great question. Yeah. I start low. So this is another thing. You want to look at your lighting while looking through your live view, right? So we're just going to start with one light. How many lights have you set up? We started talking about these different techniques and I lost track of CC.
Oh, I'm still working on this first main light, trying to get.
Okay. So do
some
you have
Rembrandt
the
lighting
ability
going on.
to move your light while you're looking at the live view?
Yes.
Do you have that ability? What
Yes.
I would recommend you doing, so let's think of your starting canvas is blackness. There's nothing there, right?
Yep.
It's just a black, empty, negative space, right? As soon as you
Yep.
start introducing that first light, right? And what you want to do, you never want to shoot from the front, okay? You want to shoot from like 45-degree angles, okay? So like come above and behind, right? Is kind of the idea you want to do. So what I want you to do is just take, there. See, I've got Rembrandt lighting and rim lighting on Loki's face right there, right? And that's kind of a technique that I do in every photo. I'll first start with that Rembrandt light and dial that in, and then follow it up with a rim light. And that's how I try and shoot all of my subjects. So if you're able to grab that Rembrandt light, that's great. But if not, I've alerted you to what it is, and you can reproduce it in the future when you're not in the hot seat.
It is hot.
But yep, I get it, buddy. I get it. So what you want to do is move your light around slowly around Peter. All right. And what I would do is start from behind Peter and kind of find that spot where you start seeing drama in your photo, right? By looking at your live view. And you're going to start shaping your light one at a time. And once you get your first light in, then you kind of got an idea of where your second light needs to be. And then once your second light is in, then you get a good idea of where your third light is going to be. But another mistake I see is everybody sets up their whole lighting setup and they'll start guessing everything, and then they'll turn their camera on. And that's not the way to go. Your live view is your biggest friend. Be weirdy him. What did he say? Can you put that back up?
So he said, if you
typically
shoot with a large aperture, and one time you told me that you typically don't go past 30% on your lights, are you bumping up the ISO, or are you doing long exposures, or a combination?
Gotcha. I do long exposures. So I will keep my ISO low so that I'm not introducing more noise. So I usually keep my ISO around 100. Some cameras can go lower. My camera can go to ISO 50, right? Not all cameras can do that. So I keep my camera at ISO 50 because you're not going to get as much noise in your photo when you're at a low ISO. And then I adjust my aperture second so that I can get the depth of field that I want. And then third, I adjust my shutter speed to let in enough light to. So sometimes if that has to be a 15-second exposure, then it's a 15-second exposure. It doesn't matter. I'm on a tripod, right? It doesn't matter. So, so basically what CC's doing is just kind of moving the light around and finding where the drama is. And, you know, whatever we're seeing from his iPad, the camera iPad, may be completely different than what he sees in the live view, which is why you always want to reference your live view. Your live view is your biggest strength in photography. So can I see what your live view looks like with just the one light that you have?
Yeah. So I've got two kind of going on right now. This is, oh, and then I hit the camera.
Okay.
Right there.
So right
Perfect.
now, and I can't tell if this is just like compression over the live stream or not, but it looks like your highlights are blown out on Peter. Can you see detail in the jacket, or is it pure white?
No, it's pure white. I got too much light.
Okay. So what you need to do is lower or increase your shutter speed. So like it needs to be a faster shutter speed, right? And that's going to give you some of that detail back. So it's not rocket science. Just dial your shutter speed until you know, the light starts looking even, but you don't want those white hot spots. That's called clipping your highlights.
Okay.
I can't imagine doing this back in the day. Shooting on film, taking a whole day to find a location, be there for the right moment, coming back home. And I know it was a trial and error process and you probably had to learn quickly, but can you imagine going into the developing room and going through your film and going, what the hell happened?
Yeah.
Now, you know,
and not only
have
it costs money too, right?
Yeah.
Each one of those shots has a dollar value that you had to spend on that film, right? So when you screw up, it costs you money to screw up.
Yeah.
You know? You look at guys like Ansel Adams, you know, who did all the national park shots.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the big reasons we have national parks to this day was his photographs inspired Teddy Roosevelt to preserve that land and to turn them into national parks. But yeah, I mean, immensely hard to do what he did.
Or just the equipment. You know how I went to, when I was living in PA, they had the Battle of Gettysburg reenactment. And I got really lucky and I went, I think it was the 100th. I'm not too sure. So don't shoot me for that. But I went there and then somebody had one of the, they were taking group pictures, but they were using that big, large format with the plates of film and, you know, and the puffer, and they had to stand there.
And exploding powder.
That, and then you had to stay still. You couldn't move. And so I was going through it, and I remember taking probably 20 shots because I was getting different angles. I was getting them, and then I was also getting the battle going on in the background. I thought it would be something kind of, you know, like a futuristic selfie of the carnage that's going in the back. I was like, this will make for a funny one. And so I was doing it, but by the time he was able to shoot one plate, I had already shot in 20 to 25 shots already. And so,
well, that's why you look at the like old photos of people and they all look grumpy, and that, like, you know, everybody had like one picture of themselves. You know, it's a big to do.
Yeah.
To have your picture taken back then.
Would you recommend a bounce card for this?
It depends. I can't see his live view at the moment, so he may be seeing he's seeing something that I'm not. So I'm reserving judgment until I kind of see what he has come up with, because we're looking at a different angle than his camera is, right? So like that shadow we're seeing may not be visible at all in his live view. So We're just going to give him a minute to work and take a look, and we'll go from there. How you feeling, CC?
Yeah, I was gonna say.
How do I feel about the picture?
Yeah, how do you feel about the process?
I have learned a lot tonight.
Really? Great.
A lot. So this has been terrific. I really appreciate you having me on for this first one, because it's definitely going to give me a lot to think about moving forward, instead of just, throwing it together and cranking out a shot.
And another thing I'd like to highlight is, like, for future guests, or CC's the first, right? So this is like a trial and error thing. We're trying to figure out the best approach for this, but for future guests who want to come on the show, like, nobody is expecting perfection out of your live setup, right? We're just trying to give you the skill set to
nobody but me.
Nobody. I just like, if I can arm you with the skill set of like systematically approaching your shots in the future, and give you a way to think about things, like, I think that's a success.
I misplaced a tripod. I'm trying to find a tripod. Hold on.
I like this because it's for me, it's more grounded in reality. You get to, I know a lot of times we see a lot of highlight reels of guys putting together shots, and I don't think a lot of people understand that even though that those guys are highly proficient at doing it, I think there's this myth around it, like, wow, this guy can set this stuff up in 10 minutes, and why can't I do it? And there's a comparison factor to it. And so I like this because you get to see some of the pitfalls that happen during things, and not only that, but you have you kind of guiding it through and go, okay, here's where you're going to run into something, here's how you can correct it. But it does show over time that this doesn't happen just like that, and it's great, especially because we're beginners, and CC's beginner too, but you get to kind of see that, and maybe it demystify some of it.
Even myself, like, I mean, I hit roadblocks all the time where I get stuck on a shot and I'm stuttering. And sometimes I'm up in my studio right now, like, my wife has the rest of the house. I get this one room. This is my room. But I'm up here for way longer than I intend. And, like, in my head, I'll come up here and I'm like, oh, this should be an easy shot. I can crank this out. And I'll be up here, and 3 hours later, I'm like, oh my God, like, I did not expect this to be so much trouble, and it can be all different kinds of factors. You know what I mean? So it's not always the same issue you run into time and time again.
I'm kind of happy with this, guys. Check this out.
Hey, hold on. Let me give you a solo. And here you go.
Cool. So I think you got a good start. I love the lighting on Peter's face. So you definitely got the rim light on his face. You see that that bright highlight like going across his glasses there. I like that you can see the mask in the foreground. I like what you have going on. The one thing I'm noticing is that a newspaper he's holding? Sorry, what is that he's holding?
Yeah. I was trying to simulate him throwing away a newspaper. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So I can't tell because of the format, but I just want you, before we move forward, I want to make sure that your highlights are not blown out. I just want to make sure that you're not pure white on that newspaper.
No, I don't think
so. If you're not,
it looks
so
if you
were, I would tell you to make your shutter speed faster, right? That would be the solution to that. Where are you at right now? Can you share with us your ISO, your shutter speed, and your aperture?
So my aperture, I'm at 22.
Mm-hmm.
Shutter speed, I'm at 1/6. My ISO, I'm at 800.
800. Okay. So that's still not a bad level, but at that point, you're going to start introducing some noise. But it's not going to be terrible. If you were to lower that ISO, here's what I'm concerned about. I think you're going to be okay in this situation at ISO 800. in an ideal world, I'd like to see you lower that to 100 or 200. If we do that, well, you're only at 1/6 of a second. So actually, let's reduce your shutter or your ISO. Take that down to, let's take your ISO down to 200 to start with. All right. And then you're going to see your frame get very dark. So what you're going to have to do is take a longer exposure. So you're going to decrease your shutter speed. So you're going to leave your sensor exposed for longer to let more light in, right? So just use your live view, and once you're at ISO 200, take your shutter speed lower until you can start seeing light creeping into your photo, and it looks natural, and you're not blowing out any of the highlights. So once you start seeing those like white highlights and like, you know, that you need to like come back a little bit, right? Can you give me full screen page? Thank you, sir. Yeah, that looks great. And you're shooting in RAW, correct?
Yes, I should be.
Okay, so if you put your live view back in front of the camera for us, CC, you can see that your dumpster is completely in the black, right? But do you use Lightroom or any photo editing software?
I do not. Okay.
There's lots of free options out there. You can look into like Snapseed. There's Darkroom, I believe, is one that is free. I would look into it, because what you can do once you snap the shot, what you can do is, and you don't have to do any intense editing or anything like that, right? But what you can do is you can bring that shadow. There will be a slider named shadows, and you can bring those shadows up, and then that's going to start revealing details in the dumpster and in the wall where it's completely black back there, right? And you're going to be able to start retrieving some of those details back, which is why you want to be shooting in RAW. If you were shooting in JPEG, those black points are going to be those black points. You can't recover any of that detail. But if you're in RAW and you start bringing that shadow slider up a little bit, all of a sudden you're going to start seeing all this detail come back that you thought you had lost. But either way, I think that you have a nice dramatic picture there. And I would be happy with it if I were you. How do you feel about it? Is there, before you snap your first frame, is there anything that stands out to you that you would want to change, or are you happy with it?
I like it.
Sweet. Then I say, okay, so next, we're at what's your shutter speed at right now?
We're at 0.4 of a second.
Okay. Are you able to put a timer on your camera? So like a 2-second timer, do you know how to do that?
Yeah.
Go ahead and put that on if it's not already. So since we increased our shutter speed, right, when you push that button, when you physically push the button, it's going to shake the camera a little bit. And it's going to introduce motion blur. So what you want to do is introduce a 2-second delay, right, which most cameras have no problem. You push that you push your shutter, your camera's going to wait 2 seconds, right? And that way your camera steadies out and it's no longer shaking, and then it's going to take the shot and you're going to be completely in focus with no motion blur. So once you have that, I would go ahead and take your picture. And then CC, we'll probably call that your shot for the evening after you do this. But what I would do if I were you, and you weren't in the hot seat and you were alone in your room doing this, what I would do is move my lights a little bit, manipulate my lights a little bit, and then take a second shot. But I wouldn't touch your composition at all, right? Just kind of move your lights around and give yourself a few different options, and maybe shoot 5 shots, right? Because none of these shots cost money anymore because it's all digital. So you can take as many as you want. So, you know, just manipulate your lights a little bit, and then yes, Pablo, a remote shutter will do the job as well. Or like that Monitor Plus app that I was talking about earlier, or
Yeah.
if you tether, you can also trigger without having to physically push the button. If you don't have any of that and all you have is a 2-second timer, then that will give you the same results. But yeah, I would leave your setup and I would manipulate the lights a little bit off of the live stream, you know, and see if you can come up with something that you like as well, and then give yourself a tough decision later, like, damn, which one do I like better? Which one do I post or whatever, you know?
Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this shot and then send it to Paige and Facebook. That way he can show everybody kind of a better.
Got it. Yeah, there'll be a higher resolution. Yeah.
Technology these days.
I know, right? I would have had to put it in a pack and send it with a pony.
Yeah,
He would have sent
and
it
in
to me
2
with a
weeks
pony.
we'll get back to you.
Yeah. How do you feel about the setup that he has is the 3 light setup, and I know you're trying to achieve a certain lighting sequence. Have you ever experimented with flooding your scene with a lot of light and then making exposure settings? So
Yeah,
you
that's definitely, you can do that. It's not typically the way that I do it.
Yeah, I didn't know if you had
Yeah.
tried it and what you thought about it.
So for reproducing daylight indoors, you need a lot of light, right? The sun,
Right.
you will never get a bigger light source than the sun, right? It's,
Mhm.
you know, no matter what light you buy, it's not going to be as big or as powerful as the sun. So to reproduce a big light source, you need a big light or you need lots of lights, right? So if you're trying to recreate a daylight scene, I would say flood your scene from a direction, right? Don't flood it from all directions, right? Because the sun is coming from a certain direction depending on the time of day, right? Flood it from one direction and then set your settings. But for me, like, because of my style and my aesthetic kind of dictates the way that I like to light a scene. So, you know, we touched on it a little bit earlier, but I look at, so for a painter, a blank canvas is all white, but for a photographer, a blank canvas is just black, the absence of light, right?
Right.
And then I introduce one light at a time and I build, it's like building blocks, right? And so once I introduce the first light, I have a good idea of where that second light needs to be. And then once I introduce the second light, I have a good idea where the third light needs to be. And the order that I usually go, like I go for that Rembrandt lighting, and then I try and get rim lighting, and then I try and light my background with in some way so that it can be seen, right? And then if I have a foreground element, I'll try and light that in some way so it can be seen, right? And then I also will try and do some, you got to think about like where your light source is coming from. So if it's an alleyway, maybe there's, so you can recover a lot of detail in this if you download one of those apps, which I would highly recommend. Just go into the App Store and look up, you know, photo editing. And all I would do is just take that shadow slider and bring up the shadows just a little bit. And I think you have a phenomenally, look at that. The lighting on Peter's face is tops, dude. You killed it, right? The light in the foreground on like Peter's mask is super crucial to the story, right? You have to be able to know, you have to see that mask to be able to tell the story. So if that light wasn't there, your story is gone, right? Your story is lost. So your story, your lighting is motivated. I think this is great. Couple things that I see that you could practice off the camera. You have a strong highlight on this side of the frame that's hitting the extreme set. You see that? And then you have a highlight behind the dumpster, which that one doesn't bother me as much as the one as this one does.
Yep, I know what you're talking about.
Yep. So if you can still get your light tuned in on Peter or whatever that light is hitting, if you can still get it there, but get it off of the extreme set, whether that's adding a barn door or a snoot or whatever, I think that'll help a lot, because that highlight takes your eye away from your subject, right?
Yeah.
Quick question.
And this is yeah, go ahead.
CC, I know when we first started, we were doing like or you were doing the adjustments. Did you snap a picture like from the very first one?
You talking about before we did the
show,
lighting?
yeah, or even from the start to show where you started from initially.
I did not. That would have been a great idea.
Oh, that would have, yeah. I think we probably need
Add
to
that to the
remember
notes
that.
for the next one.
Yeah, that way you could see where he
Yeah.
progressed through to where he got to now.
Yeah.
Because remember, it was higher.
Yeah.
You know, it was. We didn't
With the
do
Dutch
lighting.
angle.
We did, yeah, and then so
Now that
from
I know a
that
name
to
for it.
here, yeah.
Another thing you can do, CC, and when we end this, I can send you a message with some of the things that I was thinking of that you can try or whatever, so you don't forget. But another thing you can do, and then you wouldn't have to manipulate any of your lighting at all, and this can be done easily natively on an iPhone. But you can crop in. You can pull your crop closer in, right? So that you don't have as much negative space on this side of the frame, right? So
Yeah.
something like that. Look at that already. Look at that. You see how much a crop can change it? Like, that's not bad at all, honestly, right? I mean,
My
you don't
goodness, who
need to
took that
see.
photo?
You did, buddy.
You did.
You did. Right, and you're still on the thirds there. You see Peter is still on the third.
Yeah.
So I would mess around with crop. Another thing is, like, so you don't always have to shoot your whole figure, right? Like, your whole figure
Right.
doesn't need to be in there. All you want to do is tell your story. So as long as your story is being told, I would bring that crop in. We all, even without his legs, we know that's Spider-Man because the mask is there.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
You don't even have to see the blue and red. So what I would do is just kind of manipulate the crop after the fact and kind of see what works best, But the one thing that I would definitely do is get rid of that highlight on this side of the frame, even if you just bring that crop in a little bit to.
I think the
to
cropping
get
in
that.
made it great.
Yeah.
It really changed the photo. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, a crop can change everything, and it's sometimes it's things that people don't think to do. They'll take their photo and then they'll say done.
Yeah.
But you can also fix composition errors. Like, if you miss the third, or if your composition is off, you can fix that with a crop by bringing in a crop so that you're actually on a third. So you can fix things like that in post. But I personally like the tighter crop. I think it tells your story well, and you also see Peter's face better. It doesn't get lost in the scene.
Yeah.
And you don't need to see the whole dumpster to know.
Yeah.
So I think you did a fantastic job, dude.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah,
I think
it
you did a
looks
fantastic
great.
job. I learned a lot tonight. I learned an
I'm
awful
so
lot
happy
tonight.
you did.
This was very good. Very good.
I'm glad you did, bud. At this point, we're going to get ready to wrap this thing up here soon. But if anybody has any questions, did we miss any questions from earlier, or did we pretty much cover them all, Paige, that you had flagged?
No, sir. When I went through, most of them, they just kind of went in line with the show, and most people were just soaking a lot of this stuff in. A lot of great people that are established photographers, they were throwing a lot of their preferences into and suggestions and stuff like that. So
love it. That's what we're trying to build here, guys, is just a community to teach everybody. We there's a lot of people in this chat that have varying degrees of experience, and I just want to create an environment where we're helping. because I hate that people get frustrated out there, and I really don't like when people compare themselves to others. You know, like, oh man, this guy's so good and I suck. Like, I hate that. No, you're good. You just don't. You know, it's all about time. When you look at your work, if you look at your shot 1 year from today, and then you look at today's shot, you're going to see improvement. And then if you look at your work 2 years from now, and then you look at today's shot, you're going to see improvement. So it's all about just getting the time under your belt and the tools and the knowledge. And I want to help. So, you know, I love that we have varying degrees of experience in the chat and everybody helping. That's what we're trying to build here. So great job, CC. You did well in the hot seat, and you didn't lose your cool at all, man. That's what you won. Cool cucumber.
Damn it!
That's why they call him the cool cucumber. That's what CC stands for.
Hey, real quick, I just want to I really do appreciate you even considering me for this. You know, I know there's
absolutely
far more talented folks out there than I am. So I definitely appreciate you sharing the knowledge. I appreciate what you're trying to do for the community. And, you know, it makes a world of difference. World of difference. I was talking to Paige the other day about how it just seemed like it's really nice scrolling through the feed and seeing all of the photos that are being shared at this time. Fantastic.
We live in the golden age of toy photography. Like, you know, the pandemic really, I think, brought it out. You know, a lot of people are really interested in this hobby now, and a lot of people came in late in the game and they don't know where to start, and you know, can feel overwhelmed. And you know, hopefully this show gets gather some steam and people tune in, and you know, maybe someone can learn a thing or two, and that's all we're trying to do here. So
absolutely.
The rule of three. CC, what is your Instagram? Brian Lexi Lou Productions is asking what your Instagram is, CC.
I'm at Mercurial Prime on Instagram. Mercurial Prime. Is Paige typing that in there?
Of course.
I can't put it in there on the
I don't have second chair just to sit here and look good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I know my role.
This was a lot of fun. This was really a lot of fun.
Yeah,
great. I'm glad it was fun, and I'm glad you could learn something. And if nobody else in the chat has any questions or anything, I think we'll call it an evening. How do you guys feel about that?
Yeah, that's good. Hold on, I'm just going to do this really quick. There you go.
Mercurial Prime. Give him a follow.
Oh man, I just saw that.
Thank you, Stephen with a V. Appreciate you.
Looks like I got a message from Cat Williams. I gotta check
that. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah.
Cool, guys. Well, thanks everybody for tuning in for this first episode. Hopefully, you know, we'll have many future ones, and we'll keep this rolling. And you know, if you have any feedback or you would like to be a guest on the show, I would like to get varying degrees of photographers on here too. If you're more experienced, I'd love to get you on, and you know, we can do one of your setups and you can talk about the way you approach a shot, right? If you're a more novice photographer and you would like to learn and have like a one-on-one coaching lesson or whatever, reach out to me and we'll make it happen. We'll make it happen. Would love to see you all. So thanks very much, guys. Paige, CC, anything you guys want to close out with?
No, man.
Your pets.
Just thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah. That's what we're gonna hit. Yeah. Help control the pet population. Please have your pets spayed or neutered.
All right, guys. See you on the next one.
Thanks a lot.
Good evening.
Thank you for having us.